Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all, and welcome to May 31st webinar on how to break expenses rising to outpace income. I'm your moderator for the next 1 hour, Robinson Isaac Obwang. I want to join our colleague friends who are on virtually attending to this webinar. We want to thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, and more so on a Friday evening when you are traveling back home from work. We most sincerely welcome you. I want to test that the quality of the reception is clear. Dr. Charles Barugahare.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am loud and clear and I can hear you.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to give a brief background of Charles, who is the facilitator this evening, and thereafter I give him opportunity to break down or split the atom, how to break expenses rising to outpace income, a conversation coming just right before the national annual budget statement in weeks to come. So then I will also give him about 40 minutes, and thereafter you will be having conversation throughout. So I'll take your chats. We shall also allow you to ask a few questions, and then we allow Dr. Charles to give a rejoinder. Ladies and gentlemen, in the interest of time, Dr. Charles Barugahare is an author. In the last 4 years, he has written several books: Break Expenses Rising to Outpace Income, The 9 Pillars to Exploit Your Potential, A Guide for Self-Improvement, and most recently, he launched a book, Navigating the Financial Path, the 30-day Personal Finance Improvement Challenge. Dr. Charles is a family man. He's the founder for FinanceLIP. He's a financial consultant. He has helped businesses and business executives in post-COVID-19 to chart a strategic direction to ensure that most of the businesses are sustainable. He's a real estate developer. He's an agro-forestry farmer, and he's a Rotarian. That's why in his most recent book, he gave donation to health charity projects. He's a fellow of chartered and certified accountant with a long-term professional commitment, long-term commitment to professionalism and ethics. He is a person who has read and traveled, and he has received a lot of international awards for his work. And even in Uganda in 2018, he was awarded on May 1st, Labor Day, by His Excellency President of the Republic of Uganda for his outstanding contribution to the education, growth, and development, not only of Makerere University, where he was the University Secretary and Accounting Officer, but also to Uganda in general. Dr. Charles has a highest qualification, a doctorate degree in business administration. I said he's a professional accountant, a fellow of chartered and certified accountant. He has a master's in business administration from Eastern and Southern African Management Institute, and he also graduated from Makerere University with BCom. Dr. Charles has worked in public and private organizations, and his experience is over close to 25 years. I've said Makerere University as a University Secretary and Accounting Officer. He was also Director Internal Audit, Makerere University, and he has also worked in other local organizations or private entities like the Director Internal Audit and many others. Dr. Charles has mentored many people inside Uganda and outside Uganda and Africa and the world at large. Today is a mentor in financial issues, areas of risk management, compliance, budget management, issues of strategic business planning, investment, and also issues related to sustainability of businesses going forward, even in difficult situations. So colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it will take me more than 1 hour to introduce this gentleman who has written a lot and who has mentored also very many people and who have received a lot of international awards in recognition of his greatest contribution. Dr. Charles, this evening, I take the pleasure and opportunity to invite you and give us your views about how to break expenses rising to Outpace income. I want to take this opportunity to welcome you and take us in the next 40 minutes.
Today is a great day and the first of its kind. And I want to begin by welcoming all of you to this series of webinars that we are going to be running every month, starting with this one, codenamed outright Financial Matters. Colleagues, it's an honor that Dr. Robinson Ogwang is moderating this webinar, and I want to thank him for accepting to moderate this webinar, but also for the humble introduction that he has ably presented. Ladies and gentlemen, this topic, how to break expenses rising Outpace income, comes at a time when the economy is struggling, but also individuals are struggling. And the focus of this is to find mechanisms and ways to break expenses that tend to continually rise to Outpace income. The flow of this presentation today will have a brief introduction, in which we'll cover the aspect of the essence of financial management. We'll also cover the aspect of retirement landscape. Then we'll head straight into why expenses rise to Outpace income. And then we'll delve into the top ways to deal with expenses rising to Outpace income. And we'll conclude. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, who are gathered and have spared their time this evening is that when money realizes that it is in good hands, it wants to stay and multiply in those hands. And what does it mean for money to be in good hands? It means that you have the systems, you have the controls, you have the accountability mechanisms that will make it convenient for your money to stay within your hands, but also to multiply in your hands. A simple test to test that your money is in good hands is actually to find out whether you ask yourself a question where your money has gone. Do you sometimes wonder where your money has gone? If the answer is yes, it's a big test that your money may not sometimes be in good hands. If your money is in good hands, it means that question would not ordinarily rise. And this quote was emphasized by Idoko and Khan. Now let's turn to the main aspect, which is the essence of financial management. Colleagues, almost everyone deals with two important financial questions from the time we get to know about money up to the time we leave this world. And these two questions are, how do you effectively use money? This question is asked by a student who is in primary but goes to boarding, who is in secondary, who is working, but also who is retired. The one in primary is asking because he needs to know that the pocket money has been given is enough to cover him up to the visitation day or up to the end of the term. The one who is working is asking to know whether the salary he has earned is able to take him throughout the month, or it is able to take him beyond the month so that he's able to operate effectively. The one who is retired, he has a bigger question to answer, whether the money he has saved and built over time is able to take him throughout the retirement life. The second question is, how do you attract, grow, and protect money? That same question is also answered and is always a concern of the three categories: the student, the one working, and the retired. When you give a student money, he's looking at how can I attract more money from my parents to make sure I get more pocket money. He's also asking himself or herself how he can grow it at school. How he can grow it. And the third aspect is how he can protect it so that he's able to keep it up to the end of the term or up to the end, up to the visitation time. The same applies to the one who is working. The one who is working is actually trying to answer, how can I attract more money? How can I grow it? And how can I protect it to serve me in all situations? These two questions can be answered using two keys. These two keys are financial education. Financial education empowers you to know what you didn't know about money, to change and improve many aspects in your life around money. The second key is taking consistent, appropriate financial actions. You know that knowledge is not power, but knowledge only becomes power when translated into action, and it becomes more power when translated into consistent actions. I want to challenge all of you who are listening. Is there anyone who has ever built a home, if you have built a home, with one salary of saving? Is there anyone who has ever saved a big lump sum at a goal that if he or she feels it is not worth saving again? If they are there, those are exceptions. Because of that, it is very important, and it's a very important aspect, to take consistent, appropriate financial actions. Let's turn to the aspect of the retirement landscape. Now, how do people retire? Most people retire through age. This is when you reach the mandatory age of retirement. When people voluntarily choose to retire, they can also retire on medical grounds. They can retire through organizational restructuring, through retrenchment or through reorganization. They can also retire through termination. Their contracts, their terms of service can be terminated. They also retire through contract expiry. They also retire through project closure. They can also retire through disappointment. The day you are appointed, it is an appointment. The day the appointment is cancelled, it's a disappointment. And this largely happens to politicians, ministers, chief of defense forces. And when that happens, they will have turned into retirement. But important to say is that Bosa Musampung provides very insightful statistics about how people retire. And this was largely about those who retire at mandatory age. And these are the statistics that I'm going to share below. And these statistics, you realize that 1% will retire rich. You see 4% retiring financially stable and independent. You can see it is in color yellow. Color yellow, you know, it is famous for something in our country. 5% will be forced to continuously work in order to earn income. 12% will retire financially broke. Sadly, 29% will not be alive by the time of mandatory retirement. And most important, 49%, almost half of the people who retire will retire as financial dependents on family and friends. This is why this topic, break expenses rising, outpace income, becomes very important, because if you continue to spend money that matches your income, then there is nothing that will be available at the time of retirement. Now, let's head straight into why expenses rise, outpace income. There are three ways expenses rise, outpace income, and I will elaborate a little more around them. The first is Parkinson's law. This Parkinson's law came about out of research about how people were responding and reacting when they got increases in their salaries. And they came up with a conclusion that expenses will always rise to match income. And because of this threat of expenses continuing to rise and sometimes exceed income, this is why we find sometimes our money gets exhausted before the end of the month, before the end of the year, and we have no saving, and we have no money that we can put aside for emergency, and we have no money that we can dedicate to our retirement. The second is lifestyle inflation. Colleagues, everyone wants to improve his standard of living as his or her income increases. What does this mean? This means that when you get more salary, you tend to demand and to attract better things. If your child was in a school where you are paying 100,000 or 1 million, you will easily adjust to a school of 1.5 because your salary has gone up. I'll share with you a simple example of a friend of mine who, after getting a salary increment, decided to shift from an apartment block where he was paying 600,000 to an apartment block where he was paying 1.2 million. That was an increase of 100%. But this person had gotten an increase of 45%. What does that do to the person? It means it will constrain that person in terms of surviving because he has used most of the money on one item, yet he will need many other things that require money to match that lifestyle. The third aspect is comparison. There is a tendency, ladies and gentlemen, of comparing what your peer, what your friend has. You see your friend changing his or her wardrobe regularly, and you want to do the same. When that happens, any small increase that you get will tend to be matched with those demands and those desires. And that becomes a challenge because some of the things that you are attracting and you are comparing do not actually improve your value. They actually give you a competing pace. But in terms of value, quality of life, quality of health, quality of relationship, sometimes they don't actually provide that improvement in your quality of life. So because expenses continue to rise, you find you have no money to commit to what is important and what is a priority. Can we move to the next? Now, let's turn to several ways we can deal with expenses rising to match income. I want you to pause, stop, and get clarity on a few aspects. These words look very familiar. Words like basic needs, desired needs, and safety needs. I will begin with basic needs. In my coaching sessions, this is one of the words or terms that I found very hard to explain. Yet it appears a very simple word or term. Because basic needs are the essentials everyone needs to survive. But basic needs are very relative. It's relative to income. It's relative to the operating environment. It's relative to your priorities. And when you get clear on what your priorities are, the term basic need becomes fundamental. So I have attempted to define this in my coaching sessions to mean those aspects or those essentials that everyone needs, but that fit within somebody's income. If it is what you need, but that it goes beyond outside the framework of basic. I'll give you an example. If you earn 1 million, all of you know accommodation is a basic need, but you are spending 500,000 on accommodation. Then you are leaving virtually no money for any other basic need. So you become constrained. And that is where the clarity around basic needs becomes very important for you to be able to control this aspect. When you turn to basic needs, these are basically wants. And wants, you know, are unlimited. And because they are unlimited, if there is no clarity of what your wants are, then there is a risk that your desires will continue to expand and it will not be possible for you to meet them. I have seen where an individual needs and works towards getting a new car. When the car is secured, he realizes that is not the car he wants. He quickly wants another car. So it tends to a level where desired needs cannot easily be satisfied. So what can help satisfy these needs is to have clarity on what your desired needs are. If we turn to safety needs are things we require for us to consider ourselves secure. These include emergency funds. These include savings. These include investments that will enable us feel secure, but we can also turn to when actually need arises. This is why James Frick said, do not tell me where your priorities are. Show me where you spend your money, and I will tell you what they are. So I want to challenge you to spend some time in your own understanding of things to define what your basic needs are, to define what your desired needs are, to define what your safety needs are. And when you do that, it will help you to lead you into breaking expenses from outpacing income. This is why Warren proposed the 50-30-20 rule. This rule suggests that you should use your money, 50% of which on basic needs, 30% on design needs, and 20% on safety needs. It's up to you. You can flex this to suit your environment. The next. I want to turn to a matter that appears funny, but that is real. Is the financial situation real or apparent? Apparently, many people are working hard. Many people are steadily improving their income. But many people are not actually noticing improvements in their incomes. And because many people are not noticing improvements in their incomes, they actually feel that they are not working hard and that they are not making improvements in their financial lives. Because they are not seeing because they are not noticing improvements in their financial lives, they think they are not making enough money. They think that they are not working hard enough. But this may be an illusion around not earning enough. For some cases, it may be correct that they are actually not earning enough. But in some cases, it is largely an illusion. And I want to share some few examples here. One example that I would like to share is around a friend of mine who was earning 350 in 2000. This person was living a modest life in 2000. But currently, when I interfaced with him during the coaching sessions, he was earning 7.2, but was financially constrained, borrowing money left and right from banks, from money lenders, from circles to survive. The question I asked him was, is the problem not earning enough, or is the problem how you manage and deal with your money? In that context, if you reflect, was this financial situation real, the one is actually going through, that he actually doesn't have enough money to survive on, or the challenge is actually how he's managing his money? So we need to check and ask ourselves, maybe this is not a question. The first matter to pay attention to is, we know in our environment, there are people who earn well. We also have people who earn well, but are financially constrained and overwhelmed. We also have people who earn very little, that by no means it's insufficient to cover the basic requirements for survival. Now, the focus and concern would be around those two people. Those who earn very little and that it is not sufficient to cover their incomes. The other would be those who are earning moderately or well, but are financially constrained. Those who are earning well and are using their money well and are enjoying themselves, this may not be the area of focus in terms of paying attention to breaking expenses from outpacing their income. But those who earn well or moderately well, but are financially constrained and overwhelmed, that becomes a concern. Those who are earning very little, and it is even insufficient, it means it is very important to explore, one, how to moderate within that little, but also how to supplement that income. So we need to examine ourselves in answering this aspect of whether the financial situation is real or apparent. The question of, can we be real and speak to ourselves from the inner heart and say, there is X earning this amount of money and is actually living a good and stable life. But there is Y earning more, but is always borrowing from money lenders. A colleague of mine recently was talking to me and brought it as a concern. He's a junior staff, but his boss, who earns 3 times more, always borrows from him. How do you look at that? Very strange. That tends to a situation that is apparent, the apparent scarcity, the apparent shortage, because we are allowing expenses to rise and exceed our incomes. Now, let me turn to the third aspect, the wage principle. The wage principle came out because expenses were always rising to outpace income. And this principle came up with a suggestion that we need to improve our standard of living as we improve our saving and investment environment. And this principle would suggest that if you have been earning 1 million Uganda shillings and you increase your income to 1.2, it suggests that the extra 200 should be used in 2 ways. One part, which you may choose either 50% or 30% or 80% to improve your standard of living, and the other percentage, which may be 50 or 30 or 20, to improve your saving and investment portfolio. That when you do that, over time, you will be able, one, to continue appreciating that your standard of living is improving, but also you will build a portfolio of saving and investment and emergency fund that will help you to improve your quality of life for a rainy day, for the foreseeable future. And I want to use Michael's story. Michael was a person we were working with in 2000. Michael, in 2000, did not get a salary increment. In 2003, Michael got a salary increment that resulted into a net of 470,000. Assuming Michael used 50% of the increment towards improving the standard of living and 50% towards saving, and maintained that consistency, by December 2023, that would have made 20 years. At 10% interest, Michael would have earned 161,500,000 in terms of return, saving, and investment. If you maintain the same principle, following the various increments he got, because this is a real life example, because I followed up his increments up to December 2023. If you had followed this principle, Michael would actually have had 537 million on the side saved and invested for his future. And when I shared it with him, he was actually concerned why he did not have that kind of information at that point in time several years ago. I guess the audience listening to me, some of you are hearing this for the first time. Please, it's important that we share this message. You can save a soul, you can improve the quality of life for someone, you can create an impact in somebody's life. I want to, as I tend to wind up, I want to move to the last aspect. And in a word conclusion, I want to pose a few questions that should trigger us into thinking. First, consider what you can pay attention to wage a war against financial ignorance. What kind of areas, what aspects can you pay attention to wage a war against financial ignorance? Secondly, why should you pay attention to waging a war against financial ignorance? Pause and ask yourself, is there a need to actually pay attention in waging a war against financial ignorance? How should you actually wage a war against financial ignorance? And when should you actually wage a war against financial ignorance? We tend to always say tomorrow, but tomorrow sometimes never comes. The second aspect I want you to pay attention to is wage a war. Is in what ways can you wage a war against expenses rising to outpace income? I have already shared some three, but there are several others. I shared three because of time, but there are also several others that we need to pay attention to that can help us to wage a war against expenses rising to outpace income. We also need to ask, why should we wage a war against expenses rising income? There should be a clear reason, strong reason why we should actually do this. If it is not important to you, then ignore this aspect. You should also then consider, how can we wage a war, a serious war, against expenses rising to outpace income? Then we should also make a decision on when can we actually do this. It may be today, it may be tomorrow, you may say up to the foreseeable future, the choice is entirely yours. And finally, in what ways can you mitigate financial management risk exposures? Why should you mitigate financial management risk exposures? And how should you mitigate financial risk exposures? And when should you mitigate financial risk exposures? With that, I want to thank you, and I want to leave you with the last quote that I want you to read and pay attention to, which says that there are two ways to make money. You can make more or spend less. When you see circles that are around the country, all circle money are out of spending less. All major savings around the smaller things we have been able to do as individuals are around commitments to spend less. This was by John Hope Brand. I want to thank you for your time and for your attention and for listening to me and for your time towards this first webinar by FinanceLIP. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. What a evening, a lot of information, from the coaching and the mentorship. I said earlier on that Dr. Charles is someone with long-term commitment to professionalism and ethics. You can hear how he navigated us moving from overspending to realizing value addition through planning as an intellectual process involving choice and decision making, breaking down needs, basic, desired, and safe needs with all the inspirations. Ladies and gentlemen, for those who have just joined us, welcome to this webinar, an interactive space has come now. Feel free to raise your hand and make a contribution, ask questions, comments, so that Charles could get back to clear before we clock out. Feel free also to send in your comments. The chat room is busy. You can see Amos. Thank you very much, Amos, for the kind comments. I can see others really talking about the quality of the presentation, the information, and how helpful and timely it is. Dr. Charles, as we wait for some comments from the chat, you talked about the three basic needs, the three needs, but today under the climate change, we are having a lot of needs. In developed countries, at times a lot of prolonged coldness, low temperatures requiring overheating, spending a lot on energy, and then prolonged drought for farmers where you need to invest in technology. We have also, you have said about people who are working hard, but their incomes are not improving to a level that is sustainable. You have also given examples of those who, after getting improved income or revenue, the expenditure is much more than what they realize. How, in some few words, do you encourage people in this kind of situation to come out and seek for help or guidance?
Thank you so much, Moderator Dr. Robinson. The issue of climate change is becoming real. Farmers are planting their crops and planting in the right seasons, but the seasons have changed and farmers have tended to lose some of the valuable plantations that they have planted in the right time, but when the season has shifted and changed, making losses. I think one of the important aspects that we have to think about going forward is to think about simple irrigation mechanisms that are affordable in our specific circumstances. If you have a house that has iron sheets, work on having a reserve tank so that you can store some water and then use it partly to irrigate the key crops near you as one approach. You can also have some water that you can use for your cows. But I want to add that there is a need to move to some form of irrigation to support particularly the people in the agricultural sector. Now, for the other people who may not be in the agricultural sector, but whose incomes are relatively low, one way is that there are three resources that are largely around us. The first resource is time, and we can use time to create many changes around ourselves in terms of acquiring knowledge, in terms of learning, in terms of getting experiences from others. We can use time to create another form of resource, which is money. The second guidance I would pay attention to is that we need to continuously seek very productive and useful knowledge. Because when you have very productive and useful knowledge, you can easily turn a small resource, a small piece of land that you have, a small phone using technology can begin to bring some resources towards you. So I challenge that we explore mechanisms around us using the simple resources, provided we learn and improve on our ability to attract some income around the resources that are around us. We would be able to navigate and improve our financial lives.
Thank you so much, Charles. Again, you have correctly talked of high cost of living, and you have also indicated the statistics at retirement, and you see that very, very small proportion of the population is stable and progressive at retirement. Others continues to work, and others are dependents. With expenses outpacing income, the implications is very clear from your illustrations. But one thing is clear also from your illustration, that this is calls for commitment, calls for consistency, and calls also for dedication in doing what is right. Dr. Charles, through your mentorship sessions, you have mentored business leaders. And today, as a leader in the dynamic business world, how do you encourage best practices that allows spending on productive sectors that adds value to someone today and in the future, especially when there's a lot of inflation and very few people are earning?
Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. We have an issue around the financial environment we are in. About 2 months ago, I had a couple which came for coaching, for financial coaching. And this couple, the gentleman, the husband, was earning 4.5 million Uganda shillings. And the wife was earning 2 million Uganda shillings, giving a total to the couple of 6.5 million Uganda shillings. This couple told me that for 2 years, they have failed to save a single coin. and that it is haunting them in terms of survival. I told them, go on a table and write the things they can cut out from their spending. And quickly they told me there is nothing they can cut out. I said, okay, is that correct? They said, yes. I said, okay, hold a minute. I said, God forbid. Let's assume, and I've said, God forbid, let's assume the wife loses the job through restructuring that is happening in many companies. You now have 4.5. Sit down and plan for 4.5. Incidentally, they sat down and brought a breakdown of the 4.5, meaning automatically they had a saving of 2 million that they could put aside. When they did that, I told them, would you die if this 2 million is actually not there? And their response was, they would not. I twisted the question. I said, God forbid, it is you, the husband, who has lost the job. You now have 2 million from your wife to use to survive. I said, sit down and work on the budget to make sure you fit in 2 million. Incidentally, they sat down and worked on the budget for 2 million. And they brought it. When we discussed it, I asked them a question. Would you die if you were living on 2 million? And their response was, of course not. The husband held the hand of the wife and said, Charles, the session is done. I said, sir, we have not started. So I want to challenge members that despite the hard economy, despite prices going up, there are things that we can do to make a difference in our financial lives. That example illustrates that even in hard times, we can actually make a difference. And I can tell you, they have now saved every month 1 million Uganda shillings. And they keep giving me feedback, which is a testimony that it is actually possible if there is a commitment, if there is a will. I know there is a point at which you cannot save, but I can tell you, the people listening to me here, a number of you may have something small that you can put aside to save. 20, 30. I've seen people in the banks, in microfinance, on the forum, on the chat. They tell you 20 put aside cumulatively creates an impact than losing 20 cumulatively every time.
Time is not on our side. In 1 minute, there's an important question from Florence. The chat room, the current economic trend is very challenging for investment choice. Which kind of investment would you consider basing on your analysis of the current times? I think this is the last question that you can answer in 30 seconds, and then we close.
Thank you very much. The issue of investment is an issue that depends on risk tolerance. It is an issue that depends on the knowledge and information you have in a particular field, in a particular aspect. But broadly, there are secure ways you can invest money, though the very secure ways have very little returns or moderate returns. One way is the money markets. Money markets give about 11% annually, but it's compounded, and they give interest on a daily basis. And these are largely done by insurance companies. The other is bonds. Bonds are currently around 15% per annum, and they give assured return, and they pay that return every 6 months. The other businesses require you to have a good understanding of the area, and I would encourage that whatever business you want to go into, you have to first understand that business to ensure that you are familiar with it and that you are not going to go into a long learning curve to put money that you have saved the hard way and put it into a venture that you don't understand and you actually lose money. That would be my take. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Charles, for very interesting and inspiring session on expenses. I also want to thank our audience, the virtual people online, for your time commitment from the first minute to the end of the session. Thank you very, very much for the questions and the comments, and the contacts are there for you to continue having this conversation even beyond the session. We want to thank you. This is the first series, and Dr. Charles said there will be a monthly series. We welcome you to this engagement from time to time, and also engaging with the 3 books, Navigating the Financial Path, and the 9 pillars to exploit your potential and break expenses when they outpace income. Thank you so much. Good night. Nice weekend. See you next month.